Hey, JJ, did you know the movie Airplane made its debut 44 years ago today?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Some people will tell you to play it safe, but we're here to tell you to go all out. Welcome to the All-Out Blitz. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and I am joined by my eloquent co-host, Doug Orth. Doug, first, happy birthday, my friend.
Thank you. 40 has never looked so good on somebody, has it?
Really? That's good. Is it the 10th year of that for you? I hope you had a wonderful weekend celebrating with the beautiful Carla.
Yes, thank you. We postponed the celebration for another time, but yeah, it was a good weekend with Carla. So thank you for your well wishes.
Well, it's always good to celebrate those who you care about, buddy. So happy birthday. Speaking of people we care about, that's you. So today, Doug and I are going to have two jobs. One, we're going to identify players at each position, the players that are considered royalty. So we're going to use Fantasy Pros redraft rankings, and we're going to make additions or deletions as necessary. Two, we're going to identify what players at each position will enter that conversation next. Who's next? This is going to allow you to target the next batch of superstars before your current ones expire. But one caveat, Doug, we did not pick any of the players that Fantasy Pros list in the second tier of that position. We're looking for players who are going to jump into the next tier, not step into it. But before we do that, let's take a word from our sponsors. We're not just a bunch of pretty faces here at IDP Plus. We have an entire suite of tools and rankings for both offense and defense, plus a whole lot more. Right now, get your first month for just $1 with the promo code MOCKDRAFT. Head over to idpguys.org after the show to get ahead of your lazy league mates and start your march towards fantasy football greatness today with the promo code MOCKDRAFT. The link and details are in the show description. All right, Doug. Let's start with the quarterbacks. To reiterate, we're going to use Fantasy Pros redraft consensus rankings. According to them, the top tiers of QBs are Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson. Do you consider that to be your tier one?
I think that's fair right now. As we've discussed before, I haven't gotten to the point of putting my projections all the way together yet, but I think that's a solid 4 to start off with, and I think we'll talk about a couple of the guys that certainly might be pushing for that tier. But yeah, that's a solid 4.
So you would put Lamar Jackson in the top tier?
I think so. It's hard to say that his situation's gotten much worse. I mean, I think it's only really gotten better. So yeah, I think that's fair. Especially coming off an MVP season.
All right, sir. Then I guess the question is, according to Doug Orth, who's next?
Well, according to Doug Orth, I like that. I should have like an autobiography named that, right? Yes.
The world according to Orth?
Yeah, the world according to Orth. I like that. JJ, I think the key to answering the question you just posed is identifying a highly athletic quarterback on what should be a good offense. Did you realize the rushing touchdown average of the last 5 overall QB1s is 654 yards and 8 touchdowns? Now, granted, the aforementioned Lamar Jackson skewed the average somewhat during his first MVP campaign with 1,206 rushing yards. Josh Allen did the same last year with 15 rushing touchdowns, but the point remains. Now, to answer your question, Anthony Richardson played the equivalent of about 2 2/3 games as a rookie last year. Even though we barely got a chance to see him, we saw what was possible. I would argue he didn't play over that well in either one of his 2 full games and still averaged 25 points in those contests. You like this too. He averaged a point per snap in one of his 2 early exits. That was week 2 against Houston. Richardson may be the freakiest athlete to ever play quarterback in the NFL. For all intents and purposes, he might be the freakiest athlete ever to enter the NFL. His rushing ceiling is breaking Jackson's aforementioned NFL record. It honestly would not surprise me if he's able to rush for 1,000+ yards and 20 touchdowns at some point during his career. Head coach Shane Steichen may not be considered a quarterback whisperer per se, but he's one of the best coaches Richardson could ask for to guide his development. Steichen also likes to play with pace, so Richardson should play more snaps than most quarterbacks. The Colts should have 3 quality receivers at his disposal at the very least, and Jonathan Taylor to keep defenses from focusing too much on the running threat Richardson offers. While I realize Taylor should handle the bulk of the goal line scores, the fact of the matter is Richardson's bigger physically and closer to the line of scrimmage. Last point, the brotherly shove became a thing in 2021 when Steichen called the offense in Philly for Jalen Hurts. I just want to, and I'll do this with each one of these. I want to mention a couple of honorable mentions here. I think 2 other guys that I would really consider as wild cards or dark horses to enter the QB high-end QB1 fray, Kyler Murray and Jalen Daniels. So I told you all I told you about my boy Anthony Richardson. Who you got?
All right. Now, I've already sung the praises of Justin Herbert on a previous pod. I pointed out that he has been let down by the offensive scheme he was saddled with, and many of our fellow analysts consider Greg Roman to be the reason that Justin Herbert will not move up in any rankings. They're using the new offense as a reason to fade Justin Herbert. Now, I'm going to go to All Rashomon and present a slightly different perspective on this. Now, Herbert faced a lot more pressure in the 2 past seasons than he did in his first 2 years. That resulted in more rush throws, more sacks, and an injury that ended his year last year. So last year, the Chargers' right tackle position accounted for 28.1% of the total pressures the team faced. That was 4th in the NFL. Also last year, the Chargers' running backs accounted for about 10.5% of the total pressures. Roughly, PFF counts O-line and inline tight end, and then others. So mostly running backs. So when the offseason comes, Harbaugh comes in, and we immediately see a change in focus. And where did they make the most changes? Shoring up that pass block. Right? So at running back, we see Eckler. He had a 29.3 pass blocking grade last year. 8th worst of qualifying running backs. Josh Kelly, 42.4 grade, 18th worst. Both are either gone or demoted. In comes Gus Edwards, 55.1 pass blocking grade. Dobbins, 59. And they draft Kamani Vidal, who had a 79.3 pass blocking grade at Troy. All great pass blockers. At right tackle last year, Trey Pipkin accounted for the 3rd most sacks in the NFL at the tackle position. He's replaced by Joe Alt, who allowed 1 sack and 5 pressures in his final year at Notre Dame. So, yes, Herbert may have fewer opportunities, Doug, but he'll have more protection when he does throw. Plus, with the renewed emphasis on a run game and an actual run game, he's going to face much more advantageous defenses for his skill set. So for those reasons, I like the prospects of Justin Herbert regaining, right, going back to where he was as an elite QB. Any thoughts on Justin Herbert?
I'll tell you what, I'll keep this short. I do like it. I think you've taught me into it over the course of the last month or so. But one thing and one other thing that helped me with the getting back on the Herbert bandwagon, I think he's going to run more. We've seen that he can run. He is a pretty damn good athlete. So now if you're going to tell me he has more time to go through his reads, and then if 1 and 2 isn't there, then take off, he's going to do it with better blocking. So, I mean, better blocking helps everybody. So, yeah, I don't think we're going to get 4,500 yards passing from him because, I mean, let's be real. Who's he going to throw? Who's he going to throw to that much to get the 4,500? But I like him between his athleticism and just the fact that they're going to sustain drives and whatnot. Yeah, I definitely think that Herbert's a low-end QB1 that could do could do more than that.
All right, so QBs to keep an eye on for next year. Justin Herbert, Anthony Richardson, and then the honorable mentions from Doug, Kyler Murray, and Jaden Daniels. All right, let's move on to running backs, sir. Now, according to Fantasy Pros, the top tier of running backs, tier 1, is CMC, Breece Hall, and Bijan Robinson. Is that a complete list for you?
Yeah, you can make cases for about 2 or 3 others, but there's also, I mentioned Jonathan Taylor before. Look, you have to wonder what his role in the passing game is going to be. I think you could get I think Saquon could make his way up there eventually. I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get quite the volume to be worthy of being in tier 1, but or at least not this year. I think he'll push for it, but I don't think he'll get there. So I think as far as elite RB1s, yeah, I think that's a good complete list.
All right, so we have those 3 as the elite. Who's coming up next? Now, again, just as a reminder for you listening or watching, we did not look at tier 2. So these are deep prospects who we think can make the jump. So, Doug, who's next?
As you just laid out, if I have to pick a player going outside the first 2 or so rounds that has the combination of factors we look for in a running back, such as talent, good scheme, strong supporting cast, heavy volume, goal line role, and decent involvement in passing game, there's really 3 names that stand out to me among the rest: Josh Jacobs, Isiah Pacheco, and Joe Mixon. From that group, I am going to roll with Pacheco. Although the value of being an Andy Reid running back has lost its luster a bit over the last few years, some of that has been a product of Reid simply not having a workhorse back. Really, the last one I can think of was Kareem Hunt, right? Mm-hmm. Kansas City has made a concerted effort to feature Pacheco down the stretch late last season and was rewarded. Jarrett McKinnon appears to no longer be in the plans. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been a non-factor for a while and might actually lose backup job to Keontae Ingram at some point this season. All this is to say is I don't think Pacheco is going to come off the field very often. So let's look at how things change from year 1 to year 2. He missed 3 more games last year than he did as a rookie. Despite that, he ran for 100 more yards, handled about 4.6 more carries per game, and saw his targets and receptions more than triple. We know who his quarterback is, and we also know the team invested some resources into adding speed at receiver, which should unclog the box and open up some running lanes. The Chiefs' defense may not be what it was last season without L'Jarius Sneed around, but I think I've already made the case that Pacheco is probably going to make up for that and isn't going to give up much of his work, barring injury. It also bears mentioning, over the last 3 seasons, Kansas City running backs have consistently attracted about 110 targets and recorded about 90 catches. I think there's a real possibility Pacheco is one of those 60% backs we like in fantasy. 60% backs, meaning a back is getting at least 60% of the snaps and overall workload. If he keeps up his carry share from last season, which was 64%, even though he missed 3 games, and the Chiefs maintained their recent running back usage in the passing game, I think the floor for Pacheco could be 220-plus carries and 55 catches. You'll like this one, JJ. 6 running backs hit those 2 marks last year, and 5 of them finished inside the top 6 at their position. Pretty good, huh? The only one was Tony Pollard. The only one was Tony Pollard at 14. My honorable mentions here, as I mentioned earlier, Josh Jacobs and Joe Mixon. First of all, what do you think about Isiah Pacheco?
I think I'm not alone in saying I love the way he runs, right? He's the angriest runner. He's like a throwback to when running backs wanted to, let DBs know that they were there.
Yep.
So I love watching him play. I love that offense. I mean, Andy Reid's a former Philly coach, so, he was around here in Bethlehem. They used to have their training camps when he was the coach there. So I've always loved Andy Reid. I love what he does with that offense. And I love Pacheco. I would love to see him get that type of usage again. And especially if the Chiefs can start utilizing their new weapons and get that A-dot, up a little bit, move away from the line of scrimmage, start taking some more shot plays down the field, I think everything's going to open up. So I love Pacheco.
Love to hear it. Okay, JJ, who is your running back?
All right. Well, when I look at who's next, I want to see who has creeped into the top tier. Now, with CMC and then two young guys, I'd rather place my bet on a young ascending player than a veteran who still hasn't reached the pinnacle or one who was there, dropped, and now wants to get back.
Yeah.
So the back that jumps out to me the most is Jonathon Brooks. Now, Jonathon Brooks was the only running back drafted in the first 2 rounds this past year. Carolina is building around Bryce Young, and the team owner, David Tepper, is determined not to be a laughingstock of the league. He has very thin skin and doesn't like to be told what he can't do. Like, you can't throw drinks on fans, or you can't take off people's hats who you don't like. But one thing is, he's going to put his money where his mouth is. He invested a lot in offensive weapons, and he invested in the O-line. Now, we know Brooks is coming off an ACL injury. We know that. And he won't be at his peak early this season. We have to wait till the end of the year. But as the year progresses, as we head into the offseason, I think our perspective on him is going to change a little bit as he gets healthy. And what do fantasy managers and analysts love more than a running back who gets hot at the end of the year?
Amen.
Like, we see it year after year. The guy with that 4-game hot stretch immediately shoots up the rankings. So I think Jonathon Brooks is going to get hot at the end of this year. I think he's worthy of moving up. And he's a young guy with all the talent in the world. Doug, what do you think about Jonathon Brooks?
I'm conflicted because, for the reasons I think we've mentioned on previous pods, I think his breakout, and I don't even want to say breakout. I think his coming out party will be next year, but I like all the things that you just said in terms of it possibly happening in the second half of this year. I don't think he's going to challenge for I don't think he's going to challenge CMC, Breece Hall, or Bijan as far as overall RB1, but I can buy the case that he could do it in the second half of the season, because I think that's what Dave Canales is. That was the idea when they drafted him, was they want. I think, I'll tell you what, I think Canales saw a lot like a souped up Rachaad White in Brooks is what I saw, and you saw what he did with Rachaad White last year. I think Brooks is a better player. He might even be running behind a better offensive line. So I like Brooks as an RB3 that could really catch fire at the end of the season. So I for all the reasons that you mentioned, plus what I've just said here, I can buy it. I'm going to look at some other guys around that same range before him because I want the all-season contribution. But you could easily convince me if Brooks ends up having that hot stretch like you said, it's not going to surprise either one of us.
All right. Well, folks, it's draft season, and there is nothing better than a live draft. Literally, nothing is better. So get ahead of the game right now with Trophy Smack's gorgeous draft boards, complete with player stickers so deep.
How deep, JJ?
So deep you couldn't possibly need them all. And for the first time, Trophy Smack has an IDP expansion pack for all of us defensive degenerates. No more scribbling names on blank stickers. Go to Trophy Smack and get the only draft board that meets all of your needs. So check out the link in the show notes and get yours today. All right, Doug, according to Fantasy Pros, the top tier of wide receivers are CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase in that order. Is that list complete?
I think you could make a case for A.J. Brown in there, but other than that, I think it's pretty complete.
So you would add A.J. Brown to that?
Yes, I think that's yes.
Okay, I could see that. So looking at those 5, 6, including A.J., who's next?
Well, I'm not sure I see a receiver being drafted outside the top 2 rounds who has a realistic shot of being the overall wide receiver 1. But I will ask people to pay close attention to Philadelphia, and specifically DeVonta Smith. How do you like that? As we take a look at the recent offenses led by new OC Kellen Moore, the slot receiver has been a central area of focus. Last year, as we know, it was Keenan Allen. In Dallas, it was CeeDee Lamb. Before Lamb came around, Randall Cobb had the fourth highest yardage total of his career in his age 29 season. Please understand that Smith and A.J. Brown have spent roughly the same amount of time in the slot since Brown arrived from Tennessee, so all of what I'm about to say is speculation on my part. With that said, the Eagles took several shots at players that I would expect to be primarily perimeter receivers in Devontae Parker, John Ross, and Johnny Wilson this offseason. While I understand Parker retired, it is still a curious move to add so much depth behind two studs like Smith and Brown, and so little behind expected slot receiver Harris Campbell, unless Campbell isn't going to be the primary slot to begin with. The beauty of playing a hunch with Smith is that he has set a wide receiver 16 floor over the last two seasons and doesn't exactly need anything extraordinary to go his way for him to repeat that. With that said, he is one season removed from a wide receiver 9 finish in a functional offense with Brown around. Now, if we give Smith, who is an elite route runner, free access off the line of scrimmage and two-way goes, all hell could break loose. I want to get a couple honorable mentions in here again. I'm going with Cooper Kupp and DK Metcalf as being gentlemen who could not only just press for fantasy wide receiver 1 duties, but potentially, top 5 overall wide receiver 1. JJ, who are you guys as receiver?
All right. So I liked what you did, Doug, with who you decided to go with. So your honorable mentions, you said Cooper Kupp and DK Metcalf. That's fine for me. But what I was looking for, I wanted a wide receiver 2 on a team where the wide receiver 1 might either leave or be phased out due to age, contract, skill, whatever.
Yep.
Whatever reason. I was looking at that tier of wide receiver 2s, especially the ones who have just gotten paid or about to get paid. So I looked at DeVonta Smith. I looked at Brandon Ayuk. Right? Both guys, they have a name above them.
Yep.
But they're kind of coming into their own. However, I settled on a recent addition to that highest paid receiver list, Jaylen Waddle. Waddle is a very talented wide receiver. I'm not going to go over his RAS score, his combine numbers. I could read off a bunch of stats, but his yards after the catch is exceptional. His yards per route run is exceptional. He is a fantastic player.
Yep.
Plus, he plays in an explosive offense with a head coach who is always scheming ways to get his best players the balls in space. What else do we want? If anything were to happen to Tyreek, legal, injury, anything, he becomes too expensive. I don't know. But if anything were to happen to Tyreek, is there any thought that Waddle wouldn't step up to the plate with increased opportunity? I mean, clearly the Dolphins thinks he's capable because they just paid him like he is. Now, I'm guessing that there might be some movement on the team as they make the decision about Tua in the upcoming year, right? Are they going to pay him a top-of-the-line contract? Are they going to be moving on? If they do pay him, are they going to have to shuffle something about the salary cap? But all bets aside, somebody who I'm looking at is Jaylen Waddle. I don't see any reason why he easily couldn't jump into this next tier of wide receivers.
Yeah.
What do you think about Jaylen Waddle?
Well, I'll just not counter. I'll just ask you a question. Let's say Hill is injured, gone for whatever reason. Where are you putting? Obviously, we're not looking at matchups yet. Where are you putting Waddle each week?
Oh, he's an automatic start.
Yeah, if Hill's no longer in the consideration for whatever, what is he at worst wide receiver 8? I don't know.
Yeah,
at worst, yeah. So, yeah, and I don't know why he couldn't do 90 to 95% of what Tyreek Hill's doing in that offense by himself. You understand what I'm saying? So, yeah, I think. And sometimes that's just how it works, man. The number 1 guy goes down, and lo and behold, the talented number 2 guy. I mean, it happens with running backs all the time. So, yeah.
And shortstops, Wally Pipp, right?
Right.
Don't get Wally pipped. All right. So we've gone through the first three positions. Last up are tight ends, Doug. Now, according to Fantasy Pros, the top tier of tight ends includes Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and Trey McBride. To you, is this list complete?
Yeah. There's guys like Kyle Pitts I know we can't put on there because, the community as a whole is down on him, and he hasn't done enough over the last 2 years to warrant being put on that list. So reluctantly, I'll agree that's a complete list.
See, I feel the same way about that list, Doug. If I'm being honest with you, there's a lot about that top four that I have questions about.
Yeah.
And maybe not this year. Anyway, let's not jump the gun.
Sure.
That's the top four. Who's next for you?
Well, given the guidelines that we had talked about earlier, I would be warranted in saying Mark Andrews because he is outside the top 2 rounds, but he's already on the list that you provided, and I kind of want a little bit of a challenge.
Okay.
I already talked up Kyle Pitts in the Smash Pass series, and I don't want to go down that road again. So, J.A., you ready to be surprised?
Go ahead.
Pat Freiermuth is 1 season removed from a tight end 7 finish. His quarterback that season was a rookie year Kenny Pickett. Deontay Johnson was gobbling up targets, I believe it was something like 147. And George Pickens was busy running a bunch of 20-yard routes that year. Last year was an abject disaster on a number of fronts, including Freiermuth missing 5 games. Sometimes it is okay to write off an entire season, and I think it makes sense in this case. There are several reasons to be excited about Freiermuth in 2024. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are significant upgrades at quarterback. The offensive line is better. The running game should be better as a result, which should lead to the Steelers running more plays and staying on the field longer. And there's one other big change. Who's going to take Deontay Johnson's 6 to 7 targets per game from last year? Pickens might take a couple, but I don't see him becoming a 130 target player in this offense. Roman Wilson, Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins, Jaylen Warren. Even if Pickens becomes that guy that I was just talking about, we still need to find a home for at least 300 more targets because 4 of Arthur Smith's 5 NFL offenses threw the ball at least 448 times. The one that did not had Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder as the quarterbacks.
Sorry.
Do you need the bag? Do you need the mark bag?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Good. Keep going. I'm going to get a drink. Waves of nausea just came over me.
Another reason why Freiermuth is easy to like is Arthur Smith's history of tight ends. You'll love these last couple of stats here. In 3 of 4 seasons running, in the 3 of his last 4 seasons running an NFL offense, Arthur Smith's the tight end position for Arthur Smith drew at least 138 targets and finished with at least 94 catches. All 5 of his offenses have targeted the position at least 106 times. I don't think there is much doubt Freiermuth is, at worst, the second most attractive pass catcher on this team. I think injuries are the only thing that will keep him from setting career highs across the board. And that's it for Freiermuth. My honorable mentions here. I mentioned Pitts before. The other guy I want to throw in here is Jake Ferguson.
I love Jake Ferguson.
Yes, I'm happy to have him on a dynasty team or two. So, all right, wrapping things up, JJ. Who do you love at tight end? And you know what? What are your thoughts first on Freiermuth? Sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's okay. My thoughts on Freiermuth, I love Freiermuth. I think he should be better this year. I mean, yeah, that Matt Canada offense was, oh my God, that was some of the worst offense I've seen in a long, long time. I'm not sure what Arthur Smith is going to do. I'm trying to forget Arthur Smith as the head coach and remember who he was as an offensive coordinator. Hopefully, we get the offensive coordinator and not the head coach who likes to mess with everybody. Or else we might see the backup tight end getting all the targets that Freiermuth deserves.
It's Darnell Washington season.
Well, that might be fun to watch. But I think Freiermuth is a fantastic player. He's just that steady tight end who always will surprise you. I don't know. He shows up every week and he puts up stats. Isn't that what you need at the tight end position?
It's kind of what you need. Yep.
I mean, right? Just show up. Be healthy. But
That's-
as far as my choice, now I don't think this list, the Laporta, Kelsey, Andrews, McBride is the tier 1, is as hard to get onto as some of the other position groups we've talked about. For Kelsey and Andrews, I have some age-related concerns. Right? They're both getting older. Kelsey might just decide he doesn't want to do this anymore. He just said that he's working harder than he's worked before, like other offseason. He's dedicated, but he's distracted a little bit. At the very least, he's distracted. Now, Laporta and McBride are both great tight ends, but their return to this list isn't necessarily guaranteed. Laporta had a high TD number last year. I'll be interested to see if he can get back there. Trey McBride is no longer the only wide receiver target in town. I know he played tight end, but I think they signed somebody this offseason. They might have drafted him. I don't know if you've heard of him. But he might be taking some of that attention away from McBride. So I'm going with a layup. The only reason TJ Hockenson isn't in tier 1 is because of his injury. He tore his ACL and MCL on Christmas Eve, which means, and everybody kind of forgot he exists. So, and I get it. We're talking about redraft. So hurting himself that late in the season means that he's probably not going to be ready to go for a while this year. And even if he is, he's not going to be 100%. However, he's in the 3rd tier of tight ends, according to Fantasy Pros. When he's fully healthy, is there any reason why he won't be the 2B with Addison, right, as the 2A behind Jefferson in a pass-heavy offense? Whether it's Darnold or McCarthy behind center, everybody loves a good, reliable target in the middle of the field.
You're right.
And we see what Hockenson can do every year when he's healthy. So I don't know. I don't think there's much doubt that at the end of this year, when we do the rankings, or you and I are talking next offseason, a year from today, and we read through the list of top tier tight ends, Hawkinson's name is going to be right in that list again. What do you feel about Hawk this year?
I'll agree with your last point there. Yeah, I think this time next year we'll definitely be talking him in the group. The tier 1 group will be different because it always is. But if I've learned anything about this, if I've learned anything about you tonight, JJ, it's that you've become injury agnostic, apparently, right?
A little bit. I think I may have misunderstood the assignment a little bit as well, but no, I'm thinking about next year when we're doing this, who is going to be talked about in that top tier? And I see no reason why TJ Hockenson, a fully healthy TJ Hockenson, won't be back there unless Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy both suck it up this year.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with how you're looking at things here. I think my only concern here would be that Darnold or McCarthy are going to be 80% of the quarterback Kirk Cousins was, and so I think he could get wasted. I think it might be a situation where Addison and Hockenson, when Hockenson is healthy, that Addison and Hockenson are trading off games, and that's assuming that the offense can sustain more than Jefferson. So, but as far as Hockenson being the overall tight end 1 candidate next year, most definitely, I think that's almost. I would bet on that. I'll put it that way.
All right. Well, I'll take that. That's close enough to you saying I did a good job.
You get a B+.
I'll take it. Listen, C stands for credit, my friend. C stands for credit. It is time to say goodbye and let people know where they can find us and any final thoughts we have. Doug?
Yes, I'm still not a pro at this. Right. Almost here. Boom. There's my Twitter handle. Just had a article hit at the FF Today site today. That's good. FF Today site today. Yes. This one's about defensive weak spots. It's 9,000 words of my finest words all in one piece there. I would recommend bringing a sack lunch and then, and taking a 5-minute break and then finishing the rest of it. But the thinking behind this is just like I did with the offensive lines. It's hard to know, and I would lay this out in the intro. I'm not going to bore everybody with the 1,000-word intro that I had either, but it's hard to see where you're going if you don't know where you've been, type of thing, and it's hard to know. It's hard to be optimistic about running backs, quarterbacks, especially running backs and quarterbacks, if you don't know what kind of lines they're playing behind. Same thing with especially receivers, and especially with receivers, if you don't know what defense they're playing. Well, this is the first of several steps I take in order to look at the defenses, because not every week, I think the people have gotten to the sense that NFL football has now become a 7-on-7 drill. Each defense you face each week is different, and those guys are on scholarship too. So, and I try to look at that, try to get at least a little bit said about each player, each defensive player, a little bit maybe about their backups if they're notable, and just kind of give readers a first look at what I'm thinking in terms of preseason matchup analysis and the color coding that I do with my big boards. I'm looking forward to getting that done because that's how I spend July. So anyway, that was enough for everybody listening here. What do you think? What are you doing, JJ?
Well, I'm at JJ Wenner on Twitter. Make sure you are checking out Doug's work. This idea of studying defenses that teams are going to face so you can better project the offenses was something that was the first way I met Doug. That was the conversation we had. And his work on this subject blew me away. So make sure you're reading his articles. Make sure you're getting ready for everything that's coming out in the month of July. And we're going to be talking about it all on this pod. So make sure you're tuning in. So thank you to Doug for all of his work. Thank you to the whole crew at IDP Plus. You can catch me on the Rod Pod this Friday with Jameson and Joe and a guest. Sean is going to be there with us. We're going to be talking some IDP accolades. And then tune in next Wednesday when Doug and I talk some offensive line. Very excited for that pod. But for now, thank you for tuning in. And remember, when in doubt, go all out. Boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.